Okay, so I'm starting a second video on Lewis's image of this lion. So we're starting back at the original, and I just wanted to take it from here into Photoshop and show you how to uh, remove the lion from the background. I should point out on a couple, having looked at what I did on the previous video, a couple of things. Toward the end of it, I was comparing, before and after, and I'm not sure I got the comparison there exactly right. So you take that with a grain of salt. Also, when I was painting with the adjustment brushes on the image, because of the way I record this broadcast, the circle that I'm actually painting sometimes is a little displaced. It goes a little to the left or right of where I'm actually painting. So, for example, I was painting between the lion and the, I want to move my cursor. I was painting between the lion and the tree, and the adjustment brush was actually looked like it was sitting on the fur of the lion itself. That's, I really did have the adjustment brush between the tree and the lion, not on the fur. It's just an artifact of the way I record the broadcast. All right, so let's look at taking this picture over into Photoshop and seeing what if we can extract a lion out of the image there. Let's see. I can go direct. All right, so there's a couple ways of taking it into Photoshop. One is to use, since it's a JPEG image, we can do export and take it over as a new JPEG with a slightly different file name, and then bring it back when we're done into Lightroom. The other option, which we use more often for raw images, is to right-click and go up and say Edit In, and choose Edit in Photoshop. That takes it over as either a PSD or a TIFF, depending on how you have your preferences set up for Lightroom. So let's do that. Okay, and let's see. We want to edit a copy with the Lightroom adjustments. Let's say go ahead and edit. And we're in CS6 at this point because I don't have CC on this desktop at the moment. And all right, so we've come in, and we've come in as that's actually interesting. It came in as an original JPEG. All right. And I'm going to double click on the hand tool to get it full size. And I'm going to make a copy of the background layer just because I don't like to screw up the original. And the idea here is, let me blow it up a bit. I'm just using my scroll wheel to zoom in. I have my scroll wheel set up, again, a preference in Photoshop to allow it to zoom with the scroll wheel. Okay, so the deal here is we're going to pick a selection tool, and a good one is the quick selection tool. And we're going to pick a brush size. We're using the square brackets on our keyboard. And let's bring it up. Keep it a little on the small side. Okay, now we're just going to start trying to select the lion without selecting anything else. So the secret of using this damn tool is to move it slowly and in small distances so it can think in between. Otherwise it gets confused and it jumps over and takes the whole image or a whole chunk of the image where you don't want it to. Just grow the selection a little at a time. Okay, and all right. All right, and you see it jumped out here a little bit. To get rid of that, I'm going to hold down the Alt key, which you see there's a plus sign in the middle of the brush at the moment. When I hold down the Alt key, it changes to a minus, and it subtracts from the current selection. So I go over the area that I accidentally selected and didn't want to. Okay, and that came back. There's a little cleanup needed right along that edge. All right, and I think at this point I want to select a rock too. I think he meant he wanted to know how to remove the lion from the background, but I think he wants to keep the rock. So I'm going to add the rock to the selection. Just slowly paint over that. Come all the way down with the rock. And let me double click on a hand tool just to see where I am full screen wise. Got to go back to the selection tool and add to the selection carefully. Alright. In fact, we might as well select some of the tree while we're at it. Okay, and you see that made a mess of the entire image. See if I can fix it here. So I'm going to go to the Alt key again, hold down, and see if we can bring back my good selection. Photoshop sort of remembers what it did, so it doesn't screw up too bad. Alright, let's get down here. Probably needed a smaller brush right there, which I didn't have. Okay, back to the either the Shift key or just releasing the Alt key and tuning up my selection again. See if I can keep it from going out into the background. I want that to be selected though. Okay. And I want the tree there to be selected. And I want the tree here to be selected. Alright, let's grow it a little bit more. It does help if you blow it up and really do this closely, but I'm not going that careful, as you can see. Okay, so I sort of got it the way I want. And we're going to crop the bottom, so I don't care about the rock and the leaf and whatever down there. We're using most of the top. Okay. So at this stage, what I want to do is I want to use refined edge. So whenever you have done a selection, there's a refined edge button up here. If it's not there, you can get to it by going up to select and coming down to refine edge at any time. I'm going to click on refine edge, and that opens up this little window. And it allows me to view the selection I've currently made a bunch of different ways. If I click on the little window here, I can view this with marching ants. I can view it as an overlay, so it's showing me the unselected areas as with the orange or the red rubylith on it. I can show it against a black background. I can show it on white. I can show it as a black and white. I can show it on a layer, and I can show it, what else the bottom one? Reveal layer, okay. Generally in a case like this, I usually work either on black or on white. Usually seems to work the best. And okay, click to close it. Now, there's a radius slider here. I usually bring that up just a little bit, just to open it up so it becomes active. And we can view the radius. When we're doing hair, it has a smart radius. And if I click on smart radius, it says I can detect areas where there's like hair sticking out, and I can try to figure out what is the edge zone that I need to be reanalyzing the image in. So I can tell it to show the radius, and right now that's it deciding how big of an edge between selected and unselected that it's picking. If we move this radius slider up, you see how that edge gets bigger. All right, it gets more selective. It says, and that's more selective, but it's analyzing a larger area, looking for good or bad stuff, like hair sticking out and background intruding. So there's a, if you're working along something like clothing, a line of clothing where there's a nice sharp distinction between selected and not selected, you can get by with a very small radius. As you get more fuzzy hair flying out of the creature or a person, you tend to go to the higher side of the with this radius slider, right? And basically, in my case here, I don't want to make that analysis too big, but I want it to be enough to cover areas that I kind of missed with a little few hairs, going out one way or the other. Then I usually turn that off. And at this stage, I tend to blow up the image and hold down my space bar and to get the hand tool and move it around. If it will move. Come on, move. There. Oops. I guess maybe I have to use the space bar here to move it around. There we go. Okay, so you can see it's a little choppy around the fur here. So you can play with that slider one way or the other. See, if you go too far, see how it starts picking up junk in the background. If you back it off too much, it starts getting choppy and you lose some of the hair. All right. So there is this little brush here. You click on this tool and we can change the size of this. There's a size setting up in the top left of the screen above the image. We can make that bigger or smaller. I'm going to bring it down to like 10 pixels. And the idea here is you can just sort of split the difference. I usually try to stay just inside the selection, so the little plus sign is just on the selected area. And it's just basically telling Photoshop, reanalyze where I'm painting and see if you can come up with a better smart selection for me. You do a better job of figuring out what's hair and what's background. Okay? And you see it does a decent job most of the time. It's not perfect, but it's, again, is it close enough? That's really what we're after. All right? You see, it allowed me to extend out the hair a little bit more. There's a few more hairs there that are coming out. Okay, and generally not doing a bad job. And the hard part here, of course, is when the background starts looking like the fur. That's tricky for any computer to handle, including Photoshop. But it does with a little patience, it does a remarkably good job. And if you have to, you can hold down the negative to bring back areas, like if some of the fur disappeared where it shouldn't have. All right, let's look at the rock. Whoa. Okay, so occasionally you do hit little problems with it here, and it's you have to make a decision. Are these important? Is this an area that you need to clean up later? You can try holding down the Alt key and coming at it from the unselected side and paint. Okay, and then come back to the selected side with the plus sign and tell it to reanalyze the nair. And there's some combination that will work most of the time. The computer knows you're not happy and it's trying to sort all this out for you. All right. As you see in there, you've got the backgrounds almost the same as the fur in the tree. That's a real tough area to get in here. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and approach it from that side. All right, and one more time. And see, that's an area I'm just going to have to clean up later on my own. All right, so basically having done, oops, can't do that. I got to zoom out. I get the zoom tool. And I've lost control of the zoom tool. There we go. Hang on. Okay. All right, so at this stage, basically, what I want to do is I want to click the box for decontaminate colors. And because the background is slightly, it had a little bit of a greenish cast to it. So the hair along the edge could pick up that greenish cast. So this gets rid of it, okay? And in terms of exporting, I have a bunch of choices. I can export as a new layer with a layer mask in a new document or whatever. Almost always I export it as a new layer with a layer mask. All right. If I can close that off, get my computer to respond. Okay, so what we're going to see happening here is when I say OK to this. All right, what it's doing is we were working on the middle layer here, and it created a new layer with a layer mask, turned off the layer below it, so I can turn both layers off. So that's basically the selection it did. That's the final selection. Now, if you come to a spot where you had a problem, like down here, okay, you're going to have to manually fix that. Well, they give you a mask, so we have a mask here. And obviously to get rid of that, what I want to do is I want to paint with black on that little area. So I'm going to go get black. I'm going to get a regular paintbrush. Okay, get black. Get a much smaller paintbrush. All right. And let's see, how hard an edge? Okay, we're at 100% hardness here, which is good. Okay, and now basically I just, nibble away at the areas that are really important here. And again, when you're getting into a V, you're almost better off painting out too much. Then switching over to white is your foreground color, and then going along the edge of it and bring back the edge. Okay. All right. And likewise, if we think we overdid it in some of these spots, you can bring them back. And if you go over the image and you see holes in the image, for example, right there, you see I can bring back what was originally there, or take out what was originally there. Again, switch to black, and take that out if you think it went too far. And the question is what was real and what wasn't. If we turn that on, we can see what was real. So that part of the tree was real, We're going to switch back to white and paint over there. Okay.
You guys game for a couple more? Yeah?
Switch back to black. Get rid of the fine edge here. Okay, and again over this area on the fur, that's probably real. So we're going to go back to white, and we're going to bring the fur back. Make sure we have most of the fur there. Probably here also. And through here. Okay. And of course we got that edge to deal with too. But overall, not all that bad of a job. It's certainly better than, oops, where's my brush? A few areas where we nibbled away the ear too much. All right, so there we have it, basically. And so now let's say you wanted to put against a different background. And for our purposes here, I'm just going to go down, add a new layer, and just fill the layer with some other color so you can see basically what we did. Let's go to Edit. Let's go to Fill. And let's fill with, I don't know what color. Let's go a little more to the green side. Say there. Oops. Okay. So when you look at it that way, you can see it doesn't look all that bad. But it is always tricky working with hair, particularly flyaway hair, is to, how many of the strands do you include? How many can you lose? How many are important for what you're trying to do? If you're doing a dramatic background replacement like we are here, you see all the mistakes very easily. But if you're just basically taking the original background and blurring the hell out of it and putting it back in, darkening it and putting it back in, I think let's try that. We can come down to say where we started, turn that back on. All right, and if I put an adjustment layer above that layer, where, let's say we just do levels.
We got one more, if that's okay.
Okay, and we just use that to darken down the background quite a bit. All right, and if we even want to do a bit of blurring, we can go up and do go up to filter and do like a Gaussian blur.
You can hear me because you're right there.
I kind of like this better. You can only hear me.
Maybe
Hey, thank you.
say that much of a blur.
There it is. Just in time. Seriously, thank you guys so much for coming to hang out.
So let me take that top layer where we did the darkening and just merge that down. Let me throw out my fake inserted layer. Okay. So basically, let's see, turn the bottom one on. So that's where we started,
share this at home.
and that's where we stopped. All right.
So we
So you can actually do quite a bit, just lifting the animal up,
and
more or less doing a decent selection, including the fur, and then affecting the background layer, and in essence, dropping the animal back onto it. Okay. So we're going to stop at that point because my computer is obviously having trouble keeping up with me. Too many things open at a time. All right. Thanks for watching. Dick Budnik. Goodbye.